welcome. My name is Helen, and I'm a volunteer with the Columbus Area Historical Society. Thank you all for joining us today. We're very excited to be having this coffee clutch with a presentation on the fire department by Randy Keene. A few housekeeping items first. Big news, save the date. Our chili and soup luncheon is coming back. We're still finalizing details on our location, but Sunday, February 26th, we will be having that here in town. Tickets, we're not doing advance tickets, they'll just be tickets at the door. And our luncheon program that day, the talk will be on the history and preservation of the Rest Haven, which celebrates 100 years this year. And the Rest Haven is actually this year's Christmas ornament, so which you can purchase at the back. We are accepting donations. There's a basket back there. And we want to say a big thank you to Julie and Julie's Java House for having us here today. So today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Randy Keene. Randy is the retired fire chief for the Columbus Fire Department. He started with the Columbus Fire Department in 1975 as a volunteer firefighter. In 1978, he went to the Beaver Dam Fire Department in a full-time capacity and was there for 31 years. He retired as Deputy Chief of Beaver Dam Fire Department in May of 2009, and he started as Fire Chief for Columbus in June of 2009, so back to back. Randy served for 12 years here in Columbus as our Fire Chief. He retired in July of 2021, and all told, he served 46 plus years in the fire department field. Randy has been volunteering with Columbus Area Historical Society since he retired, and he helped create a beautiful exhibit at our former museum. We had a few pictures posted online. Thank you so much, Randy.
Okay. Thank you, Helen. Well, thank you for coming today. As Helen mentioned, I'm retired from the fire department. Sometimes I'm more tired than retired, I think. So retirement isn't all that it's cracked up to be at times. So anyway, we're just going to have a quick presentation on the history of the fire department. And as you can see here, it was organized in 1877. So coming up in 4 short years, we'll have the 150th anniversary of the department. And Assistant Chief Ryan Rostad is here, and Lieutenant now, Matt Erke, is here. So I'm sure that they're going to have some big plans for that. Start thinking about it now. So anyway, we're going to start at the beginning and the early days. The first fire company started in 1876, so that was before they organized together and officially became the Columbus Fire Department in 1877. So there were the 3 companies. Each company elected its own officers until 1918, even though they joined together in 1877. Early water supply, there's various wells around the city. There was an underground reservoir. The Crawfish River and Creek supplied water. The city put in a water system with hydrants finally in 1896. So there were no hydrants until that time. So this here is framed and hanging at the fire station, and it's from 1888. It's a newspaper article about the hose running team, and that they were state champs in 1888. Now, if you read the fine print, it will show you that there were only 4 departments that were in the contest. But they were still state champs. So the next year, by the way, there's a hose cart there, and the competition was timed as far as how long it would take for them to lay out the hose and hook it up. So anyway, Columbus was state champs. So the next year, they repeated as state champs, and there was more than 4 teams that year. Anybody want to take a guess as how many? 5. Yes, 5. But anyway, they repeated, and so here's a picture of the team members here with their names down below. And then there was a hook and ladder running team that were state champs in 1895, so that was a few years later. I'm going to point out one one name right here, Moses Jones. Most of you probably knew Buck Jones.
Yeah.
That was his dad. So his dad was like 55 years old at the time Buck was born. So I'm not sure if he was adopted or what the case was, but anyway, that was his dad. And Moses Jones is right here in the middle. So here's another, that same picture, and it lists all of them by names and what their occupations were. So here, there's a brewery worker, a painter. The fire chief was George Link. There was a shoe store worker, a harness maker, a carpenter, a rural mail carrier, another brewery worker, a blacksmith, lumberyard worker. Moses Jones was a clerk. Dick Quintmeyer was a painter and store worker. I remember Quintmeyer's paint store when I was a kid downtown. And we had another carpenter, a brick mason, a carpenter, another brewery worker, Emil Brockup, a butcher. I remember Brockup's meat market. And let's see, another blacksmith, a laundryman, and another brewery worker. So, okay. Yes. Yes.
Are those pictures you're showing on there, those are all in the fire department?
The question is, are those pictures all in the fire department? The first several that were the state champions are framed, yeah. And the other ones I took out of some newspaper clippings. So you'll see some pictures in here that are photographs from newspaper clippings. So not the best quality, but it gives you an idea of what it is. Okay, the stations and the apparatus. So in 1877, at the start of the department, the station was in a wood frame structure on North Water Street, which later became the veterinary hospital. So I'm not sure exactly what building that in or if it does exist, not to this day. In 1886, it moved to 125 South Ludington, where when the steamer engine was purchased in order to keep it in a heated building. City offices were located upstairs in this building, so that would have been across the street from the old Capri. Now you can tell I'm with the Historical Society. I say the old Capri instead of tequilas. So, and then in 1893, it moved to the current City Hall building, which was built in 1892. So, the historic City Hall, showing the fire department doors at the time, and they were right over here. So here's what it looks like today. This is where the council chambers are. And so there's 3 sets of big windows in the council chambers, and that's the same space as where the doors were for the fire station at that time. But when it was a fire station, obviously it was at a lower level in the building. Oops. And for those of you that recall, the police department then was in here prior to the council chambers. And just a side note, there was a door there that if you needed to see a police officer and nobody was there, there was a door that would get you into the police station without having to go through City Hall. So after hours, there would be a switch there that you could turn on, and around the city there were red lights on poles, and that if the officer on patrol were to see the red light on, he would know that there was someone waiting for him at the police station. So the bell tower above City Hall and above the fire station here, there was a bell tower up there. The bell tower has now been cut off at that level right there. But that's where the bell would be hung, and that's how the firemen would know that there was a fire. Don't ask me who was ringing the bell or how they got word, but that's how the firemen were alerted. And there's a up-close picture of it. The bell's still in there.
Is that the bell that's in front of the fire department?
You're one slide ahead of me. That's all right. So anyway, there's where it looks now. The bell tower was up on top of that area there. So, Larry, as Larry said, where is the bell tower now? It's in front of the current fire station. And it still has the name on it there. So the first engine was a horse-drawn steamer, and I would assume that it was purchased in 1886 because they made reference to moving into a building that was heated in 1886. This picture was taken, I had seen a note on it somewhere between 1906 and 1908. And can you tell where that is?
In front of where the Capri used to be?
In front of where the Capri used to be, in that block.
Yeah, right.
But, all right, here's where Sharrow's building is. Look what it says over here.
On the awning.
What's that?
What does it say on the awning to the right?
Looks like paint, yeah, you're right, good eyes.
No, I don't. I have that picture at home.
Oh, okay. So, anyway, I just noticed over here, look what it says there next door there. Post office. So, that I could read. So, yeah, so there it is today. But now if you go back here and see this, I don't know what you'd call it there, sticking out.
It's like a balcony.
And anyway.
Was that Dr. Shelley's office for a while? Some doctor's office up here?
That I don't recall. So, posers are up there? Okay. So anyway, that is now gone. So you can see it's just blocked in there. All right, so then in 1925, the department got their first motorized engine. It was a 1925 American LaFrance made in Elmira, New York. It was a Halloween baby. It was finished on October 31st, 1925. This picture then was taken outside of the fire station. So that balcony is no longer there. This door you can still see on City Hall, but there's no fire escape leading from it, so watch your first step when you come out. So this picture I assume was taken either when they first got it in 1925, but they would have gotten it late in the year. I think it didn't arrive until December. So I noticed there's no snow on the ground, but there's chains on the tires, so who knows. Could be a winter like this. So, or it could have been taken in 1927 to mark the 25th anniversary of the department. So in 2002, the department had a recreation of that previous photo. Notice no fire escape anymore. And so this was on the, for the observance of the 125th anniversary of the department. So there's the new fire station that was built in 1946. Notice there are now 4 bays. So this truck on the far left here was purchased in 1946. So then since they got that other truck, now they have 4 bays. It probably wouldn't have fit in the old station at City Hall. Then here is that 1925 LaFrance. This was an old ladder truck. No, not an aerial ladder, but just carried ladders. And here was a tanker to go to rural fires to carry water there. So there's that 1946 Persh engine. And they had a cab for firefighters in the second row there as well, made by Peter Persh and Sons of Kenosha, Wisconsin. So here's a picture from around 1957. Whoops. They added this rescue unit, which we'll look at a little bit in detail in a minute. And then they added this ladder truck, which was a 1957 American LaFrance. That was the first aerial ladder truck. So this was not the one that came to Columbus, but they had a newspaper article about it. This is very similar to the one that we got in Columbus. And the price, $39,432. So anyway, so there is the one that we had in Columbus, parked in front of the existing station. And then 3 years later, the purchase of a new engine, a 1960 American LaFrance pumper or engine. And you can see, as I mentioned before about Buck Jones, it looks like he's driving it there. And obviously it's in a parade, not on the way to a fire. So this would have replaced that 1925 in 1960, so we're looking at 35 years that that other truck was in service. So at that time, it was an open cab, just like the ladder truck was. There were jump seats right in here. So in other words, there was a seat here and on the other side where a firefighter could sit in, and they'd be facing backwards. And no seat belts, no protection of any kind, and which is a lot different today, obviously. In the back, the firefighters would stand on the tailboard going to the fire, and there would be a bar across there. So in the middle, that's what we'd hang on to. In the middle of winter, we'd put our arms up over the bar to hold on, while with the other hand, we'd hold up the tarp over the hose bed, because if it was very cold out, that's how we kept out of the wind. So, preparation for the new station. These pictures are from 1973. The existing station opened in 1974. So the location of this station was kind of where the existing station was. There was a house on the corner, the Mud Rock House, that, now I thought that that was moved, but it looks like they're taking it apart. Anyway, the house disappeared in order to build the existing station, and then, let's see, the left of the station back there is a post office. So, the existing station is partially where the old station was, plus where that house was on the corner. At the time then, while they tore this down, before they could put the new one, the apparatus had to be stored outdoors. So here's one of the trucks sitting here. In the winter, that winter of 73 to 74, then they found places or garages around the area that they could store the trucks during the winter. The one vehicle, though, that stayed outdoors at this location was what they call the rescue truck. It was, and the ambulance at that time, and that was kept near where the siren used to. Tornado siren was located out here on Harrison Street, and they would have to respond and to a very cold vehicle during the winter to respond to calls of that. So the existing station. And now the big ones. So the Kurth Brewery fire in 1916. So that was a pretty big fire for that day. The two people were injured in that. In directing the horses from the stable, August Hayden was kicked by one of the frightened animals and severely injured. And William Miniman, volunteer fireman and employee of the brewery company, was overcome by smoke and badly burned. So, but he will recover. So, they ended up bringing in a pumper from Portage to assist in fighting that fire. That would have been a horse-drawn pumper. Now, I don't know for sure, but someone suggested that it was sent down on the train. So here's the corner of Park Avenue and Farnham Street. So Apple Tree Restaurant today would be situated to the left here. The existing brewery that is still there is right here. And we'll have another look here. And so the existing brewery is down way down on this end. And these were the two buildings that burned in the fire here, and they were never rebuilt. And then eventually the other parts of the buildings here came down. So where these buildings are sitting is now where Day One Pizza would be and Ace Hardware. And so the remains were knocked down shortly after the fire. And just a few more pictures from there. So, Columbus Water and Light. That building is still there. And on December 30th, 1953, there was an explosion and subsequent fire at the Water and Light. And so there was a blackout throughout Columbus because there was no power. And some of the pictures that followed. So I was born 8 months after this. And you know, whenever there's a blackout in the big cities, there's always a baby boom 9 months later. So I asked my mother one day, I said, was I born a month premature? And she looked at me, Lestrange, why would you ask that? Well, I explained, well, there was a blackout 8 months, prior to me being born. So she said no. So, a resident of Danville told me, oh, don't forget about the Danville school fire. So, and this was something that I was personally not aware of, but a Columbus landmark, the Danville schoolhouse raised by fire in 1966. So I don't know if anybody recognized, I'm sure, well, this picture would have been taken who knows when. But. Oh, so one other thing I just noticed. Margaret Shear, Daily Register Columbus correspondent. So there's another piece of history there. Margaret Shear used to, for those of you that haven't been in Columbus for a while, had her own Columbus Fall River Party Line radio show on WBEV every morning. I think it was from like 9 to 9:30. And she had the news on the radio from the Columbus and Fall River areas. Okay, so today, here's the Columbus Antique Mall. And back in the 70s, and before that, it was Stokely Canning Company. And on July 1st of 77, there was a fire down there. And the area that was behind there next to the antique mall was later used by Badger Disposal, and it was in that area there where this fire took place. So I was on this fire call. I happened to be at the fire station the night that it came in. So it was quite the major fire. And just a bunch of pictures from that fire.
Did you guys go into the structure at all for that fire, or did you
No.
do a lot of exterior stuff?
Exterior, yep. You can see the smokestack back there too. That
I think they did
Doesn't
some pumping
exist
out of the river too.
yes, yeah. I remember Beaver Dam brought an engine over and they drafted out of the river.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I forgot to mention, I mentioned two active firefighters. We got Larry Olson here, who was an honorary member, was on for 20 years or plus. So, and we got Fire Chief Jim Boness right there, and I don't recognize the other ones. But. Okay, then as if we didn't have enough to that year or that summer, that 3.5 months later, not too far from there, we had the Columbus Mills fire on UD Street. And so actually the canning factory and the mill were both along the mill pond, not too far from each other. And that was on a Thursday night. I was a member of that one. Let's see, it was mentioned here that it was called in at, I forget what time it said here, 8:45, I think, or something. And anyway, it was my brother that called it in. We lived on River Road at the time, and he was going somewhere on River Road. And as you come down River Road, you could see the mill ahead, and the fire was at the top. So he clearly saw that. So he stopped at Ganta's house on UD Street, and which was right near the mill, and told them about it, and they called it in. So the chiefs. At this point, I haven't found any records yet as far as going back to 1877. But I did find, with Fred Dart's help, that H.A. Leaders was a chief from 1894 to 1910, John Heitke for a year in there, 1911, and then George Link from 1912 to 1923. Then in 1924, William Schultz was a chief, and now we do have a picture of the following ones that you're going to see. These pictures are at the fire station now with their information. So William Schultz, 24 to 45. Art Zahn, 45 to 53. Harold Wendt, I remember Harold. He worked at Caldwell Lumber. And then Merlin Klecker after that, until 1974, until the end of 74, and then the start of 75 was Jim Boness. And Jim was started as chief just when I got on the department in January of 75. So at Madison Area Technical College, the training center down there, it was dedicated and named after Jim Boness. Jim put a lot of effort and work into making sure that became a reality. And Jim died on June 12th, 1988, and the dedication was 2 weeks to the day, June 26th. So he missed it by 2 weeks. And that building, so that was in 88. That building has been replaced since. They have a new facility now. That training center is no longer there. And Fred Dart was chief from 88 to 2001. His wife Della is here. And this is being recorded and should be online. So Della's going to show this presentation to Fred. So at this time, I want everybody to say hi to Fred. So hi, Fred.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Fred's famous line was, if you ask him how he's doing, he'd always say "finer than frog's hair." So then Glenn Butch Dykstra till 05, and Butch passed away this past year. And then I had to add myself since the last one. So. Yeah. All right, the fire department to the rescue. As I pointed out earlier, there was that 1951 emergency unit, so equipped with resuscitator, acetylene cutting torch, portable lung, and asbestos suits. Now you can scratch every one of those because nothing like that has been used in years. Then in '64, we got the new rescue truck, which was a transport vehicle or an ambulance. Well, they always refer to it as the rescue unit. Purchased in 1964, and Fire Chief Jim Boness is there, along with firefighters Jim Rutherford and Charlie Yelk. And that stayed in service until 1978. And I'm sorry, 77, when the city of Columbus got contracted with a private ambulance service. And back then it was Paskey Ambulance out of Portage. So that's when the fire department went out of the ambulance business. Paul Zeidler, I just threw this in here too. He wasn't affiliated with the fire department, but he ran an ambulance service in town, and he primarily handled transports. A lot of them from Columbus Hospital down to Madison and so on. So one thing to note, his back wheel is not falling off there. It's just a fold in a newspaper. So, but Paul ran the funeral home on Dickinson Boulevard. So times have changed. So here, we've got a crash here, and we've got a priest on the crash scene giving last rites on the scene. Now, you don't see anything like that anymore, and you haven't seen it for a long, long time. There was a time when funeral homes would be called to the scene to take them away from crash scenes, and that's no longer the case either. So now there are medical examiners for each county. They come and do the removals.
What year was that, Randy?
That I don't know. I would say sometime in the 60s.
So was it common for a priest to accompany the fire department to a crash, or would this have been a random?
I really can't tell you. Yeah, the question was, would a priest respond with us? Well, no. But, so anyway, you can see some of the damage. The cars weren't built like they are today, thank God. All right, so now we're into the 60s. There's our department in 63. All the names are listed there. So, in the front row, we had Tom Walker. No, let me just mention one other thing. There was another picture similar to this. They had 29 members in it, and there was 28 that we knew who they were. There was one person nobody could remember who it was. Of the 28 people in that picture, 26 worked in town. So if you had a fire during the day, no problem. And they had a lot of businessmen and business owners that were on the fire department. So now today, though, people are working out of town a lot more. And it's that way in Columbus, but it's that way with every department. And you don't have the people around during the day like you used to. So anyway, first row, Tom Walker. And starting here, Tom ran a lumber yard. Then we got Russell Andler. Russell Andler had his own garage repair shop, which is now Wise Guys down in North Water Street. Vernie Opel he was my neighbor and worked for Heine Oil Company. Heine Oil Company was where Lifestar Ambulance is currently located also on North Water Street. Pete Drolshagen was also a police officer. Irv Nelson worked for the John Deere dealer where my dad worked. Emery Fadness, I'm not sure where Emery worked, but Emery was killed in a car accident shortly after this picture was taken. So he was killed in 1963, so the same year. And let's see, Jim Rutherford, no, I'm sorry, Harold Wendt was next to Emery. As I mentioned, he was at Caldwell Lumber. Jim Rutherford, Ronnie Schulze, I think worked at a feed mill at that time. Lloyd Edwards, I believe he worked out of town. He was one of those that worked out of town. And Lester Christians. Russell Namer in the second row, I think he worked for Public Works. Bob Buck Jones with the police department. Bob Llewellyn was at the post office. Bob Tetzloff had his own, had his own paint store, Tetzloff Paints on East James Street. Charlie Yelk had the machine shop right behind the Kurth Brewery. So that's the only part of the Kurth Brewery that's left besides the brewery, the bar building. It is now a recycling place. So it's between the existing Kurth Brewery and the old bus garage. Marvin Fierke, that's your Norma's brother. So where did he work?
What?
Where?
She can't hear.
Oh, okay.
So where did Marvin Furkey work when he was on the fire department? Do you know? He worked at Heine Oil Company.
Oh, okay.
Didn't he? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So another one at Heine Oil. Pat Lang, I think he worked at Chisholm Ryder. Bob Powers, Dick Heine, so Heine Oil Company. So we had three of them there from that company. Joe Allschwager Sr., he had a mink ranch in River Road, and Fred Brum. Then in the back row, Merlin Linky ran the Deep Rock gas station on East James. Merlin Klecker, Gordy Voth, Russell Wendt. Russell worked at Caldwell Lumber. Ed Emko, Fred Rather was janitor at the high school. Jerry Farnkoff, Rube Pieper worked at Columbus Products back then, which is now Interpac. Earl Whittoon at Earl's Cafe. Jim Boness ran the Black Hawk Tap and was at that time worked for Borden's as a milk delivery person. And Bob Gretzer at Columbus Water and Light. So then as we move on to the mid to late 60s, a lot of the same people there. In 1977, this was taken in observance of the 100th anniversary of the department, or centennial in 1977. So, and right there is a guy with hair. That would be me. And more recently, retired Bill Klitzman. And we got Larry Olson right there in the back row.
My brother's on the other side.
Yeah, on the other end. So we had bookend Olsons. Yeah. So, all right. Honorary members, members who retired from the department and who had served at least 20 years or made a significant contribution to the department. Honoraries include members who retired from 1919, that's the earliest we had records going back, to recently retired personnel. So Larry Olson is one of them, and I am now too. So these markers are grave markers that we placed at the various cemeteries to denote the honorary members and that they had served on the fire department. The last 2 summers, my sister Beverly and I have gone down, and we had a list of honorary members, and so we searched and to make sure that they had a marker, all the honorary members, and we probably put in about 20 of them. And so there's a few out there that we can't find, so maybe they were cremated, which then they wouldn't have a grave. So here is today Tees Salon, 136 East James Street. Anybody know the significance of that location?
Earl's Cafe.
Okay. So, Earl's Cafe. So we've got Norma Whittoon here, Earl's wife, and daughter, Joyce. And so they ran the cafe for quite a few years, and Earl was a captain on the fire department, right? Yeah. That's your car? Yeah, okay. That's an ugly car. So anyway, there's Earl's Cafe. So the significance of this is that in the 60s, if you call the fire department, it was probably answered there. Now, does anybody remember what number you had to dial before 911? I'll give you a hint. 623. 5151. And if you wanted the police, it was 4141. But Earl's was open around the clock, and Earl was on the fire department. So this would be prior to, well, currently it's at Columbia County. If you call 911, it goes to Columbia County, dispatch there. Prior to that, there was a dispatch in the police department here. Prior to that, there was answered at City Hall during the day, Monday through Friday. And then at night, it would go to an answering service run by Ron and Marcy Steindl in their house, in their home. And so then prior to that, if you call the fire department, you ended up at Earl's. Don't ask me about prior to that. So anyway, in talking to Norma here, so Norma would take a lot of the calls. And then there would be a button there that she would push to activate the fire siren. So then that's how the firemen were notified back in those days. And so then she would take the call, the siren would go off, and then the first firefighter that got to the station, he would pick the phone up, and then Norma or Joyce or whoever would tell the firefighter, where the fire was or what the incident was. And that's how they were notified back then. Norma was telling me that if just she and Earl were at the cafe and it was going to be closed, Earl would go home first, or would it be you? One of you would go home first, call up there, say, I'm home now, and then they could go home too, so that somebody was always near the phone. So that's dedication.
There was a phone at the house.
Yeah, right, yeah, phone at the house too, yes. Yep. So anyway, that's how it was done back then. So, and then there's Earl. And I think he was a captain when he retired, I believe. Yep. So, and we did not overlap, so he retired before I started. And then there's a plectron that the firefighters also, like into the 70s, got those and would carry them around, or maybe late 60s, I guess, into the 70s. And so that would beep, and all the firemen would hear that you got a call. And then, but it wouldn't tell you where. So that was either plugged in at home, or you can unplug it. It was on battery. You could take it with you. So, but
Batteries didn't last real long.
yeah, and batteries included, right?
Yeah.
So then you rely on if you didn't have carrying that with you, you just rely on hearing the siren. So initially the siren would blow around the clock. So 3 in the morning, if there was a fire call or a rescue call, the siren would go off and wake up most people. I'm sure they appreciated that, especially in the summer when you slept with the windows open. Then they changed the policy at one point and did not blow the siren after 10 p.m. until 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. the next morning. So. Okay, so the fire department is involved in more than just fighting fires. For many years, they operated Fireman's Park. The firemen back in the early days, this showing the pavilion here, which was built in 1916, the firemen did a lot of the work in constructing that. And then they ran the park until, I'm guessing 70s or early 80s. And then the city took it over, and now it's a part of, the city ran everything after that. The firemen, the 4th of July celebration. So I think, didn't the Columbus 4th organization just celebrate their 50th year, I think? And recently, so just prior to that, then it was the fire department that ran the 4th of July celebration. So, and so here's one of the ads that they had for it. One thing that they had back then that they don't have now, and that is the Drum and Bugle Corps competition, and which was a big thing. They would get corps from all over the country, and they would be in the parade, and then they'd have competition at the park at night prior to the fireworks. Dodge County Firemen's Tournament was hosted, well, the county tournament is, the fire departments in Dodge County will ask to host the tournament, and it's a celebration for a weekend where they have a parade, of water battles, Queen's contest, softball tournament, dances, and other entertainment. It was hosted by Columbus in 56, 67, 77, and 92. So in 77, we wanted to do it because of our 100th anniversary. So did it in 56. There's in 92, so I see, looks like Sandy Farnkoff and Karen Dykstra pulling our old hose cart. Fire Queen contest still goes on. I don't think, Columbus hasn't had a representative in quite some time or entered the contest. Firemen's, the Columbus Firemen's Auxiliary. So Della Dart was a part of that. So, and, so what's that?
Joyce was.
Oh, Joyce was, yeah, that's right. Yep, thank you. Yep, Norma and Joyce. And so organized in January of 56, wives of members and honorary members ran fundraisers, including a cookbook sale and bake sales, distributed materials to school children during Fire Prevention Week, assisted with the annual pancake breakfast and the selection of a fire queen. And they brought food and drinks to the firefighters at the scenes. To me, that was the best part. So I do have a picture here of some of them from the 70s, early 70s, or possibly 60s. So we get Harold Wendt's wife, Mabel, Bernie Opel's wife, Margaret, Jerry Farnkoff's wife, Sandy, Russell Wendt's wife, Evelyn, John Power's wife, Pat, and Pat Lang's wife, Charlotte. So just a few of the members. So what I call new history. A new fire station will be built sometime in the future. Columbus is rich in its preservation of history. Preserving the history of the fire department is a goal with a new fire station. So, the city of Columbus is, like I said, is big in history. So look at the aquatic center on the left and the pavilion on the right. So when the aquatic center was built, they wanted it to look like the pavilion. So, I don't know, maybe you didn't know that, but. Why not have a new fire station resemble the historic City Hall? New Major League Baseball stadiums are being built with a throwback historic look. So our new fire stations, while we don't need a clock in the City Hall, it'd be nice to have the original bell for a home and a bell tower that could be the focal point of a new station. So there's just some pictures of new fire stations that have the historic look. Okay, this is a picture from the Delton Fire Department up at Lake Delton by the Dells. They restored their antique and put it in their lobby, and they put all their historical information there. This is also at Delton, just historical items that are on display. I'm sure a lot of you knew Doris Dingy. So Doris called me one day when I was chief and asked if she would like to donate $4,000 to the new fire station whenever it's built. And I said, well, do you have anything in particular in mind? And she says, no. Well, her dad, Henry Krenz, was one of our honorary members. He was on the department from 1931 to 1951. And so I said, well, would you like, how about putting that towards a historical display? And she was all over that. So that's what the money's earmarked for. Here's the Middleton Fire Department with their antique engine in their lobby. In Middleton, then they also have, like in their hallways, they have on display what they call their Hall of Flame. And it's a way of keeping their historical items on display. So you saw that hose cart that was shown in that parade, so we still have that. This is one at Middleton that they restored and put on display. Verona's done the same thing. Wanakee, they've got 2 engines in their historical display. Wanakee also restored their hose cart. So here's our antique engine sitting in storage, waiting for a new home, collecting dust, as you can see. Well, that was in 2020. I managed to dust it off and cover it with a tarp after that, but so we'd love to have that on display. And the hose cart is also in storage, and that's at the old Countryside Ford dealership. So, our antique engine and historical artifacts need a new home. And so, anyway, thank you to the following. John and Darlene Marks and Joe Hammer, Peter Kalin, Fred Stair, who's been long gone, and Jan Ulrich, Sue and John Walcott, and Norma Whittoon. So, and also I should add Fred Dart to that as well. So that's it. So yeah.
Did you forget about the Columbus Chemical Fire? That's got the biggest fire we had.
Yeah. You're right, I did. Yep. I looked at the old ones. It's more recent history, but yeah, you're right.
That's our last big fire you guys.
Yeah. She was asking about the Columbus Chemical Fire yep. So that would have been in 2009, May 11th, 2009. So, Helen?
So, I've done a little research on historical fire companies. So by the time that Columbus was doing theirs though, there was no like, oh, you're not paying a subscription, so we won't put out your fire, right? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They used to have subscribers, but I mean, that wasn't the case.
No, she was asked, Helen's asking about fire departments that charge a subscription up front in order for them to come and put the fires out. No, nothing like that in Columbus, and usually that is with a private fire company. So there are non-municipal private companies, but I don't know of anybody in this area that would do anything like that. So, anything else?
I had one other question. So what about, how did they find out how these, like fire investigation, fire forensics? You know, how did they know how these big fires started, like at the Power and Light, the explosion? Like, how's that changed?
Well, the question is as far as about determining origins of fires. Well, there's a lot, how has it changed? So today there's a lot more investigative tools that can be used. And there's now more training as far as fire investigations, unlike what there used to be. So those that are fire investigators, I mean, they just go in and observe, and then look for certain signs that show the origin of the fire. So it's usually, unless it's a complete burn down, it's usually fairly simple, at least find the area of the fire origin, but then pinpointing to exactly what is the tougher part.
That's amazing.
So.
Tell us a little bit more about the bell. Where was it made or purchased from?
The question.
Still ring it, or is it too brutal for
the question about the bell, where it's made, I really don't know that. Does it still work? Yes, only because once in a while kids will go by and ring it, and by the time we go and look out the window, they're gone. So.
I think it was made in Wisconsin. On the back side of the bell, closest to the station, there's an inscription on there, year it was made and where it was made at.
So it wasn't made in Japan?
I don't believe
Oh,
so.
okay.
I think it was like 1886 or something is when it was made.
Okay. So, anything else? All right.
This was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.